The desert stretched wide under two burning suns. The sky was pale and endless, and the ground cracked like dry skin. In the middle of this wasteland, a group of alien raiders moved in a long line, their armor made of bones and metal scraps, their voices harsh as they laughed at the pain of their prisoner. Behind the biggest raider beast, a creature with scales and claws, something half reptile and half machine. A young alien girl was tied with rough chains. The chains cut into her skin, leaving red marks, yet she did not cry. She only walked, dragged step after step, her feet bleeding against the hot sand. The raiders shouted at her, they threw stones at her. They told her she would not survive 10 days. They mocked her glowing eyes, strange eyes that shimmered like liquid silver, eyes that made her different, eyes that made them fear her. For 10 days they had dragged her across the desert. For 10 days she had eaten little more than dust. For 10 days she had kept her head low, waiting, praying, and hoping that her suffering would end. High on a dune, watching from the shadow of broken rocks, a man stood silent, his face hidden beneath a torn cloth, his body wrapped in the remains of an old human uniform. He was not one of them. He was not of this world. He was a human. His name was not spoken here, no one in this land knew him. Yet his eyes followed the girl, and inside him something burned, something heavy, a memory of battles fought and friends lost. He had seen cruelty before. He had seen prisoners dragged like this, and he remembered swearing to himself that he would never stand aside again. The wind howled through the rocks, carrying the stink of the beast and the rough voices of the raiders. The man's hand rested on the old weapon at his side, not a gun, for he had run out of power cells long ago, but a blade, sharp and silent. He watched as the beast dragged the girl forward, her steps slower with every mile. The raiders laughed louder. They wanted her to collapse. They wanted her to crawl so they could strike her again. To them she was only a slave, a trophy, a thing of shame. But the man saw something else. He saw the way her silver eyes lifted to the horizon, even when her body shook with weakness. He saw the spark that refused to die. He whispered to himself, "She's not giving up." And his hand tightened on his blade. Far below, the girl stumbled. She fell to her knees. The chain jerked her forward. The beast roared and kept walking. The raiders cheered, yet she stood again. Weak legs trembling, but she stood. The man felt anger rise inside him. Not the wild anger of hate, but the quiet, dangerous anger of a soldier who had seen enough. He had been alone on this world for too long. He had kept away from its wars, from its tribes, but now, as he looked at the girl, something in him broke. This was not just another fight. Not just another struggle of aliens far from Earth. This was about cruelty. About a child of another race being torn apart by chains and laughter. And he could not watch. The suns dipped lower, painting the desert red. The raiders set up camp. They tied the beast with heavy spikes. They dragged the girl to the ground, chaining her to a stone. She lay silent, her breath heavy, but her eyes still glowing faint in the twilight. The man stayed hidden, his heart beating slow and steady. His soldier's mind calculating, counting how many raiders there were, how many steps between him and the girl, how many moments before they noticed him. For now he did not move, he waited, but deep inside he knew. Tomorrow or the day after he would strike. The girl closed her eyes and whispered words no one else heard. Words of her people, words that begged the stars for mercy. She did not know that mercy was already watching her from the shadows. She did not know that one human was about to change everything. The desert night grew cold. The beast snorted fire from its nose. The raiders slept around their fire, drunk with their own cruelty. And above them the stars began to shine. Strange constellations, unfamiliar skies. And somewhere among those stars was Earth, a home the man would never see again. But in that moment he felt he had found a new purpose. He whispered once more to himself, to the desert, to the stars, "I will not let this continue." And in the silence of the alien night a promise was made, a promise that would shake the lives of all who thought they ruled this world. The girl did not know it yet, the raiders did not see it, but a storm was coming, not of sand, not of wind, but of a human's will, and it was already too late to stop it. The night was cold, colder than any desert on Earth. The heat of the twin suns had vanished, leaving only black skies and sharp winds. The raiders huddled around their fire, their laughter fading into drunken snores. The beast growled in its sleep, chains clinking against the spikes that held it down. From the ridge above, the human watched, his cloak wrapped tight against the wind, his eyes fixed not on the raiders, not even on the beast, but on the girl. She was chained to a broken pillar of stone, her head resting against it, her eyes closed, but every now and then they flickered open, faint silver light glowing like the last embers of a dying fire. He felt something heavy in his chest, something he had not felt since Earth. Back when there were still soldiers around him. Back when he fought for his people, not for survival. He had told himself he would never fight again, not here. Not on this planet, but watching her chained like an animal. He felt the old promise return. His mind drifted back to the day of the crash, his ship burning as it fell through the skies of this strange world, the storm tearing it apart, his comrades gone in fire and smoke. He had crawled from the wreckage with nothing but a blade and a heartbeat. Alone, he had walked the wastelands, fought the creatures, hidden from the tribes, until he became a ghost of the desert. But ghosts cannot feel, ghosts cannot care. And yet here he was, caring more than he wanted to admit. He thought of the words his commander once told him. A soldier's duty is not to win every battle. It is to choose the battle worth dying for. He had laughed at those words back then, but tonight, as he looked at the girl, he understood. The raiders did not know what she was. Not truly, they only knew she was valuable, dangerous, maybe even holy to some, cursed to others. Her silver eyes marked her as one of the hidden kind, a race whispered about in taverns and slave markets, said to carry a gift older than the stars, a gift that could turn the tide of war. The human did not believe in legends, he believed in scars and survival. But he saw her strength even in chains, even after 10 days of torment. She had not broken. She had not begged. She had not surrendered her spirit, and that was reason enough. He crouched lower, studying the camp, counting 12 raiders still alive, maybe more hiding in the dunes. The beast was strong. Armored scales, iron claws, a monster bred for war. His blade would not pierce its hide easily. He would need a plan. He closed his eyes and breathed slow, the way he had been trained. One breath, one thought, one purpose. Down below, the girl stirred, as if she could feel the eyes on her. She lifted her head, her gaze sweeping across the dark, and for a heartbeat her silver eyes locked on the ridge. She could not see him clearly, but she knew someone was there watching, and in her chest hope flickered. Small but alive, the human froze, then lowered himself further. Yet in that moment he realized there was no turning back. She had seen him or sensed him, and the connection between them was set. He whispered to himself, "If I walk away now, I will never forgive myself." And in that whisper was his choice. The desert wind rose, carrying sand like knives. The raiders cursed in their sleep. The beast rattled its chains. The stars above burned cold and distant, and the human stood, his blade catching the faint light. He did not move yet, not tonight. Tonight was for patience, tomorrow for action, but in his heart the decision was made. He would not allow her to die in chains. He would not allow cruelty to rule the sands unchallenged. As the hours passed, he planned. He remembered old tactics, old lessons. He marked the guards, the weak points, the shifts of the beast. He thought of traps he could build from stone and rope. He thought of distractions, of fire, of silence, but most of all, he thought of survival, not his own, but hers. He could die in the desert and no one would care. Earth would not know, the stars would not remember. But if she lived, if her gift lived, maybe this cruel world would remember the human who chose to fight. The girl whispered again, words soft like a prayer. The wind carried them, but he could not understand. Still, he felt them, like a call, like a signal. And in the silence of the night, he answered with his own whisper, "Hold on, just one more day." The dawn came slow, red light bleeding across the dunes. The raiders stirred, their laughter cruel again. They whipped the beast awake. They dragged the girl to her feet, forcing her forward once more, and high above, the human followed. His steps silent, his eyes sharp, his blade ready. The hunt had begun, not of him chasing them, but of him stalking them. A predator in the shadows, and none of them knew. Not the beast, not the raiders, not even the girl, that a storm was moving with them now. A storm carried by one man, one soldier, one human. And in the heart of that storm was a choice already made. A choice that would turn blood into legend. A choice that would echo far beyond this desert, far beyond this world, into the stars themselves. The desert stretched for miles without mercy, dunes rising like frozen waves, every grain of sand burning under the double suns. The raiders moved in a crooked line, the beast pulling the girl forward, her chains scraping, her steps heavy, her body close to breaking. High above on the ridges, the human followed, his movements quiet as the desert wind, his cloak blending into the sand, his eyes sharp as steel. He was no longer just watching. He was studying, learning, waiting. Every raider had a pattern, the way they walked, The way they carried their weapons. Some careless, some cautious, some too drunk from the night's fire to notice anything beyond their feet. The human counted each weakness, locking it in his mind. The beast was the hardest to study. Massive, armored, with scales that glistened like black stone, iron claws sinking deep into the sand, a monster built for fear. But even monsters had limits. Its chains were heavy, its temper unstable, its eyes restless, and the human saw all of it. He remembered his training. The lessons drilled into him long before this world, lessons of patience, of silence, of turning shadows into allies, and now, the desert itself became his weapon. The dunes his walls, the winds his cover, the silence his shield. The girl stumbled again, her body weak, yet her silver eyes still burned. Still alive, still defiant, she looked up at the suns, and for a moment her gaze turned toward the ridges, toward the human she could not fully see. But somehow she felt him. He crouched lower, his heart beat slow, he whispered to himself. Not yet. His voice almost swallowed by the desert wind. The raiders shouted and cursed. One struck the girl with the flat of his blade, laughter following like smoke. The human's grip tightened on his weapon. Every part of him wanted to strike now, to silence the laughter, to end the cruelty, but he waited, because a soldier knows timing is the edge between victory and death. Night fell again. The raiders built another fire, their shadows stretching long and crooked across the sand. The beast roared once, then lay down. Eyes glowing faint in the dark, the girl was chained again, her body trembling with exhaustion, her lips whispering silent words, words of hope or despair. The human could not tell. From the dunes he moved closer, one step at a time, his blade strapped across his back, his eyes never leaving the camp. He studied the fires, the guards, the gaps between them, the rhythm of their patrol. He was a predator now, and they were prey too blind to see. He reached the edge of the camp and placed a hand on the sand, feeling the vibrations, the beast's breathing deep, the raiders' movements clumsy, the girl's chains rattling softly like a call for help. For hours he stayed there, still as stone, a shadow among shadows, every detail carving itself into his mind. And when the first light of dawn began to creep across the desert, he whispered again, soon. The next day the hunt grew sharper. The raiders grew careless, thinking the desert belonged to them, but the human was patient, circling them, testing the edges of their awareness, throwing small stones to watch which ones turned, brushing sand to see if they noticed the trails. They did not. The girl felt the difference. She felt the air change, the silence grow thicker, the presence stronger. She looked toward the dunes again, and for a moment her silver eyes widened, as if she understood that something unseen walked with her now. By evening, the human had set his first traps, simple snares hidden under the sand, sharp stones placed in the path where bare alien feet would step. Nothing to kill, only to wound, only to send fear into the raiders' hearts. When night came again, he struck in silence, one raider wandering too far from the fire, drunk and laughing to himself. Never returned, dragged into the shadows, the sound of his last breath swallowed by the desert. His body left for the sands, the others did not notice until morning. When the count fell short, they searched, they shouted, but the desert gave nothing back. The human smiled from his ridge. The hunt had begun. The girl, chained and weak, heard the confusion, and for the first time in 10 days, she felt hope grow stronger. Her whisper to the stars changed. Now she did not pray for mercy, now she prayed for vengeance. And the desert listened. The raiders grew restless, arguing, their voices loud, their beast snarling as it felt the fear in them. The human watched it all with calm eyes, every sign of weakness, every break in their order, every mistake feeding his plan. He was still one man against many, still one blade against armor and beast, but he was human, and humans are not only strong, they are stubborn, clever, and dangerous when pushed. The girl closed her eyes and let herself believe. Believe that the shadow in the desert was real. Believe that he would come. Believe that her chains would not be her grave. And above them all, the stars burned cold. Silent witnesses to the birth of something new. Not just a rescue, not just a fight, but the beginning of a legend. The legend of a single human who chose to stalk an army in the sands of another world. The desert night was black and heavy. The wind carried the smell of smoke from the raiders' fire, sparks flying into the sky like lost stars. The raiders sat in a circle drinking from iron cups, laughing with cracked voices, their weapons lying carelessly beside them. The beast rested nearby, chained to a pillar of rock, its scales glimmering in the firelight, its chest rising and falling like a furnace, each breath shaking the chains, its yellow eyes half closed but always watching. Always waiting, the girl was tied as before, her arms bound, her body weak, her silver eyes dim but still alive. She stared at the fire, but her mind drifted elsewhere. She thought of her home long gone. She thought of her people scattered in chains. She thought of the stars, wondering if they would ever hear her voice again. But then a sound came so soft only she noticed. A whisper of sand shifting, a stone rolling. Her eyes lifted to the dark, and though she saw nothing, her heart raced. Because she knew he was there, the human shadow, the one who had followed them for days, the one who made her chains feel lighter. Up on the ridge, the human crouched, his hand on the hilt of his blade, his breath steady, his eyes locked on the raiders. He had waited long enough. The time for patience was over. Tonight he would strike. Tonight the desert would remember his name. He slid down the dune, silent as a ghost. The sand swallowing the sound of his steps, he reached the edge of the camp. The firelight painting his figure in gold and shadow, and in one smooth motion he moved. The first raider never saw him. One moment he laughed. The next a blade slid across his throat, blood spilling into the sand. The human caught the body before it fell, lowering it without sound. Only the fire crackled. Only the wind whispered. The girl's eyes widened, she pulled against her chains. Her heart pounding, she wanted to cry out, but she held her tongue. For she knew this was only the beginning. The human struck again, slipping behind another raider. His blade flashing once, the alien stiffened, then collapsed, his cup spilling red wine into the fire. The flames hissed, but the others only laughed, thinking it was the drink. But then, the beast lifted its head, its nostrils flaring, its eyes burning bright. It smelled the change in the air. It smelled blood, it roared, and the night shattered. The raiders leapt to their feet, shouting, reaching for weapons. The human stood revealed now, his cloak falling back, his blade dripping red, his eyes cold as steel. For a heartbeat silence, the raiders stared, their laughter gone, their faces twisted with shock. A lone human stood before them. One man against many, one blade against a beast. Then chaos exploded, the first raider charged. Spear raised, the human sidestepped, cut the spear in half, and drove his blade through the raider's chest. Another swung an axe, but the human ducked low, kicked the alien's legs from under him, and drove steel through his throat. The girl watched, her breath fast. She had never seen such movement. Such fury, his body moved like water, like a storm. Every strike sharp, every step sure, but the raiders were many. They circled him, shouting, blades flashing in the firelight. The human fought like a machine, yet he was still flesh. A spear cut across his arm, blood spilling, but he did not stop. He did not falter. The beast roared again, straining against its chains, its claws digging into stone. It wanted blood, it wanted to tear. Its roar shook the night. One raider tried to strike the girl, perhaps thinking to use her as a shield. But before his blade fell, the human was there, cutting him down, his eyes burning, his voice low as he growled, "Touch her, and die." The girl trembled, not from fear, but from something else. A strange fire lit inside her, the battle raged on, the raiders falling one by one, the fire kicking sparks into the sky, the human bleeding but unbroken, his blade singing in the dark. At last, only 3 raiders remained. They hesitated, fear in their eyes. Their leader shouted curses, but even he stepped back, for he saw something in the human's eyes, something not of this world, something that said, "I will not stop." But before they could flee, the beast's chain snapped. The sound echoed like thunder. The monster roared, smoke pouring from its mouth, its claws tearing free, its massive body shaking the ground. The girl cried out, the raiders stumbled back. Even the human froze for a breath. For the beast was no simple creature. It was a weapon bred for war, built for death, its scales black as iron, its jaws wide enough to swallow a man whole. It turned its burning eyes on the human, and the desert held its breath. The girl's silver eyes shone bright, brighter than ever before, and she whispered with trembling lips, "Please, survive." The human lifted his blade, blood dripping from his arm, his stance steady, his eyes locked on the beast. The raiders forgotten, the girl forgotten. There was only the fight, only the storm. And in the silence between roars, between heartbeats, the desert itself seemed to listen, waiting, watching, knowing that this was no ordinary battle. This was the first strike of something greater, something that would echo beyond the sands. The human stepped forward, the beast lunged, and the clash shook the night. The beast lunged, its claws slashing, its roar shaking the night. The human rolled aside, sand exploding around him, his blade flashing as he struck. The steel glanced off the creature's armored scales, Sparks flying, the beast screamed in fury, its eyes burning with yellow fire. The raiders scattered, shouting in panic. Some fled into the dunes, others tried to hold their ground, but they were no longer masters of the night. The desert belonged to chaos now. The human pressed forward, striking again and again, his blade seeking weakness, his body bleeding but unbroken. The beast swung its massive tail, smashing a stone pillar to dust. The ground shook. The girl cried out, chains rattling as she tried to crawl away. The human saw her, saw the fear in her silver eyes, and he made his choice in that heartbeat. This fight was not about killing the beast. It was about saving her. He darted forward, cut through her chains with one clean strike, sparks bursting as the metal snapped. She gasped, falling into his arms, her body trembling. "Weak but alive, can you walk?" he asked, his voice low, steady. Though his chest heaved with pain, she nodded, though her legs shook like branches in the wind. The beast roared again, turning toward them, its claws digging into the ground. The human grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet. "Run," he said, and together they ran. They fled into the dunes, the fire behind them burning bright. The raiders shouting, the beast tearing after them, each step shaking the earth. The girl stumbled, her breath ragged, but the human pulled her onward, his strength carrying both of them, his eyes scanning the dark, searching for a path, searching for survival. Sandstorms rose in the distance, the winds howling. The desert itself seemed to fight against them, but he welcomed it. Storms could hide them. Storms could blind the beast. Behind them the monster charged, chains dragging, raiders shouting commands it no longer obeyed. It wanted blood, it wanted flesh, and it would not stop. The girl gasped, her voice weak but urgent. "You should leave me." "Save yourself," the human shook his head, never slowing. "Not happening," he growled. "I didn't break those chains just to run alone." She looked at him, her silver eyes glowing faint in the dark, and for the first time in 10 days, she felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt trust. They reached a canyon, rocks rising like broken teeth. The human pushed her ahead, climbing with one arm while his blade stayed ready in the other. The beast roared below, slamming into the stone. The rocks shook, dust rained down. The girl nearly slipped, but he caught her, pulling her upward, his muscles burning, his wounds stinging. But he would not let go. At last they reached a narrow ledge. The storm whined, screaming above. The human pressed her against the rock, his eyes scanning the darkness. The beast clawed below, unable to reach them yet. For a moment there was silence, only their breaths, only their hearts pounding in the night. The girl whispered, Why risk everything for me?" The human looked at her, his eyes hard but his voice soft. "Because no one deserves chains," he said. "Not you, not anyone." Her eyes filled with tears. But not of weakness, of something stronger, something that burned even brighter than fear. The beast roared again, climbing higher, its claws cutting into the stone. The raiders gathered below, shouting curses, throwing spears that clattered against the rocks. The human knew they could not stay. He searched the canyon walls, his eyes sharp, and there he saw it, a narrow path twisting through the cliffs. Dangerous, steep, but it led deeper into the desert. "Into safety, we move," he said, taking her hand again, leading her along the path step by step, every stone threatening to give way, every shadow hiding death. The storm above grew wild. Sand slashing their faces, the girl stumbled, but he pulled her forward, never letting her fall. Behind them, the beast tried to climb, its weight tearing the rock apart. Boulders crashing down, the raiders scattered, some crushed by their own monster's fury. The human and the girl slipped into the storm, the desert swallowing them whole, the beast's roars fading in the wind, the fire of the raiders lost behind the wall of sand. At last they found shelter in the ruins of an old temple, broken stone walls half buried, carvings glowing faint under the moonlight. The girl collapsed against the wall, her body shaking, her breath ragged. The human stood guard, his blade ready, his eyes scanning the storm outside, his body bleeding but unyielding. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" He did not answer right away. His eyes stayed on the storm. Then he whispered, "No one important. Just human." Her silver eyes glowed brighter, and for the first time in days, she smiled, weak but real. The storm raged on. The beast howled in the distance, but inside the ruins there was a fragile peace, the girl free from her chains, the human standing watch, and in that moment, a legend began to breathe. The desert had not claimed them. Not yet, and tomorrow, the true hunt would begin. The storm raged through the desert, wind screaming like lost souls, sand whipping across the ruins. Yet inside the broken temple there was silence. The girl leaned against the cold stone. Her chains gone, her body weak, but her eyes brighter now, silver light glowing faint in the dark. The human stood at the doorway, his blade in hand, his cloak torn. His body bleeding from shallow cuts, but his stance firm. He had faced worse. He had faced death before, and tonight he had chosen life. Not his own, but hers. The ruins were old. Older than the raiders, older than the beast. Carved with strange symbols. Faded lines that glowed faint under the moon. The girl touched them with trembling fingers. Her voice soft. These are of my people, the ones who came before. The ones who ruled before chains. The human glanced at her. His eyes narrowing, he did not speak, but he listened. She traced the carvings, her silver eyes reflecting the glow. We were not always slaves. Once we had cities, once we had power, but the others feared us. They feared what lived inside us, the gift of light. So they broke us, scattered us, chained us, her voice cracked. But she kept speaking. They say we are dangerous. They say we can turn the stars themselves into weapons. But all we wanted was to live free. The human leaned on his blade. His voice low, steady. I've seen this before on Earth too. Those with power feared those who were different. Fear always breeds chains. She looked at him surprised. On your world too? He nodded slowly, his eyes distant. Not the same, but close enough. The strong trying to crush the weak, thinking it makes them safe. But it never does. Her lips trembled, then she whispered. Then you understand? Before he could answer, the beast roared in the distance, its voice rolling through the storm. Deep and furious, the girl flinched, pressing close to the stone. The human lifted his blade, his jaw tight. The raiders had not given up. Their voices echoed with the beast, shouting through the storm, horns blasting, drums beating. The human stepped outside and saw them, torches moving in the dunes, dozens now, maybe more. They had called for reinforcements, an entire horde coming through the sand. The girl staggered to him, her silver eyes wide. You cannot fight them all, he said nothing. His hand tightening on the hilt of his blade, his eyes sharp, his breath steady. She grabbed his arm, desperate. You will die. He turned to her, his face hard but calm. Then I die standing. Not crawling, her voice broke. Why risk so much for me, for someone you do not know? He looked at her, and for a moment his voice softened. Because I do know, I know what chains do, I know what cruelty does. And I will not watch it again. The girl's eyes shone. Tears mixing with silver light, she whispered. Then I will not let you stand alone. The human frowned. You're too weak. She shook her head, her voice trembling but fierce. Weak in body, yes, but not in spirit. The gift is still inside me. The light has not died if I can summon it. I can help. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Then summon it, because when that horde arrives, we'll need more than steel. The storm cleared slowly, the torches of the raiders shining brighter, their horns echoing across the canyon, the beast's roar shaking stone loose from the ruins. The human stepped forward, the girl behind him, the desert wind carrying the sound of an army. Inside the ruins, the carvings glowed stronger. The girl touched them, closing her eyes, whispering words in a language older than the dunes, her silver eyes blazing brighter, her body trembling as the light stirred. The human glanced at her, then turned back to the horizon. The horde was coming fast, shadows moving like a wave, their weapons gleaming, their cries filling the night. He lifted his blade, his voice steady. Let them come, the girl's voice rose. The carvings blazed, the ruins hummed with energy, and for the first time the human felt it. The weight of her gift, the power that had made her people feared, the power that might save them both. The raiders reached the canyon mouth, their beast leading, their voices rising in a war cry. The horde filling the night, the human stood tall, his shadow long against the fire, the girl's light shining behind him, silver flames dancing on the stones. The desert waited. The stars watched. And in that moment, two figures stood against an army, one human with a blade, one alien girl with light, and the horde marching closer, closer, closer. The storm was not over. It was only beginning. The night was alive with sound, horns echoing, drums beating, the storm fading as the horde marched through the canyon. Dozens of raiders, maybe more, their armor clattering, their voices like thunder, the beast at the front roaring with fury, its chains dragging broken stone in the ruins. The girl stood with her hand pressed against the carvings, her silver eyes glowing brighter with each breath, her voice rising in an ancient tongue, light flickering across her skin, weak still, trembling but not broken, never broken. The human stood before her, his blade in hand, his cloak torn, his body marked with blood and dust. Yet his back was straight, his eyes hard. He looked at the coming horde and did not flinch. One man against an army, one human against the desert's fury. The raiders saw him and laughed, their leader raising a black spear, shouting in a harsh voice, "A human alone standing in our path, you are nothing, you are dust." "You are prey," the human said nothing, only lifted his blade, the firelight glinting on steel, the silence heavier than any words. The horde surged forward, spears raised, axes flashing, the beast charging with a roar that shook the canyon. And in that heartbeat the human moved. He leapt into them like a storm-given flesh, his blade cutting fast, his body weaving between strikes, every motion sharp, every strike certain. A spear shattered, an axe fell. Blood splashed across the sand. The raiders pressed harder, surrounding him, yet he did not step back. He fought with the fury of Earth's forgotten wars, with the memory of fallen comrades, with the unyielding heart that made humans dangerous. Behind him the girl cried out, her light blazing brighter, the carvings glowing with ancient fire, her voice trembling as she pushed her gift beyond her fear. The ruins shook as power stirred. The beast crashed through the raiders, its eyes burning, its jaws opening wide. It lunged for the human, claws slicing the air, but he rolled beneath, his blade striking again. Sparks flying from armored scales, the raiders cheered, thinking the beast would end him. But then the girl screamed, not in fear but in power, her silver eyes exploding with light, a burst so bright it cut through the night. The beast froze mid-lunge, its body trembling, its roar turning into a broken cry, the light burning across its scales. The raiders staggered back, shielding their eyes. The human looked over his shoulder, saw the girl standing tall now, her body glowing, her hair lifted by unseen winds, her chains gone, her spirit unleashed. She was no longer a prisoner. She was fire. She was hope. He turned back to the beast, raised his blade and struck deep, the light guiding his steel, the blade sliding between the scales, finding the heart. The beast roared once more, then fell, shaking the ground as it died. The horde froze, their voices silenced, their beast slain, their eyes wide with fear. And in that silence, the human stood over the fallen monster, blood on his blade, light behind his back. The girl stepped forward, her silver eyes burning, her voice strong now. "No more chains, no more fear, we are not slaves." Her light spread across the ruins, the carvings blazing like suns. The raiders stumbled. Some dropped their weapons. Some fled into the dunes, their courage broken, their leader shouting in rage, but his words lost in the storm of light. The human raised his blade again, his voice calm but sharp. "Run, or join your beast in the sand," and they ran. The horde breaking apart, torches scattered, drums abandoned, their army undone by one human and one girl. The ruins grew quiet, the storm passing, the stars clear above, the beast lying dead, the sand drinking its blood. The human lowered his blade, his chest heaving, his body heavy with wounds and exhaustion, yet his eyes still sharp, his spirit unbroken. The girl walked to him, her light fading back to a soft glow, her steps weak but steady. She looked at him with silver eyes that now carried hope instead of despair. "You stood against them," she whispered. "You stood when no one else would." He looked at her, his voice low. "That's what humans do." She smiled faintly, her tears shining like stars. "Then the galaxy will remember tonight. It will remember the human who stood against an army." He shook his head, sliding his blade back into its sheath. "Let them remember you, not me. Your people need a voice. Not a ghost like me," but she shook her head, firm despite her weakness. "No, they will remember both. The girl who carried the light and the human who refused to bow." They walked together out of the ruins. The desert quiet now, the stars watching above. Somewhere far away, other chains still clattered. Other slaves still prayed, but the legend had begun. The first spark of a fire that would spread. One girl with light, one human with steel, and an empire about to tremble. And so the desert whispered a new name into the night, a name carried by the winds, feared by raiders, remembered by the stars. The name of the human who stood tall,